Okay, so I'd like to welcome everybody to number 106 of the Circle of Wine Writers. Let's talk about events. And today the topic is let's talk about Trebbiano Toscano, a grapes renaissance in Tuscany, with Åsa Johansson, our circle member. I'd like to extend a welcome to those of you joining for the first time and also to the non-members amongst us today. Just a little bit of background. The Circle of Wine Writers was founded in 1960 in the UK, and today we have around 270 members, comprising of wine writers, broadcasters, educators, and other professional communicators. We're now based much further across the world, with 50% in the UK and 50% overseas, so far more international today. There's more information about the Circle of Wine Writers if you wish to find anything on our website, or if you're interested in joining, please go to the site. And alternatively as well, if you're not a member and you'd like to join our mailing list for regular invitations to these events, then please do let us know and we can add you to the mailing list. I'm now going to hand over to Michelle Shah, who's on the Circle Committee or not on the Circle Committee, but for organising these events. And over to you, Michelle.
Thank you, Andrea, and I'm delighted to present Åsa Johansson, a fellow Circle member, a specialist in Italian wines and freelance writer for Swedish and international publications. Åsa moved to Italy from Sweden in 2001, and she writes on wine, food and travel for Decanter, Quench Magazine, Corriere Vinicolo, Svenska Dagbladet, and many more. And she started Sweden's first podcast on Italian wines, Italian Podden, and she also produces her own Tuscan extra virgin olive oil, La Collina Blu. So in this session, also we'll be joined by three prominent Tuscan producers: Stefano Capurso, the CEO of Dievole Estate; Sofia Rune, the owner of Terreno Estate; and Maddalena Fucile and Matteo Vaccari, winemaker and owners of Cigliano di Sopra. Thank you so much also for being with us today, and over to you.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for having us, and thanks to the producers, because we just started harvest here in Tuscany, so it's quite busy. So thank you for joining. So this is what we're going to do. I'm going to give a short introduction to Trebbiano Toscano. And then together with the wine producers, we're going to take a look at the grape growing, the situation for them. And then we're going to take a look at the vinification and style, because all of these three wineries, they make a different style of Trebbiano Toscano. And then we're going to take a quick look at the market and price, and trying to understand what the future challenges and possibilities could be for this variety. So I'm going to share my screen. Just a second. There we go. Do you see it? Yes, good, perfect. So just a short introduction to Trebbiano Toscano. It's maybe one of the grape varieties that has the worst reputation that you can think of, but yet it's planted widely. It's quite difficult to get correct statistics because there are 15 different Trebbianos in Italy, and sometimes they're counted all together, and sometimes they're counted separately. But they did a study on these different types of Trebbianos, and what came out was that most of them are actually unrelated. Some are connected, or the same variety, like Trebbiano Spoletino and Trebbiano di Abruzzo, and also Trebbiano di Soave and Trebbiano di Lugana, that is now called Turbiana. But all the rest are like single varieties. So sometimes when you get the statistics, there are 36,000 hectares with Trebbiano, but then they're counted all together. Only Trebbiano Toscano, these are statistics from 2017 from OEV. And here you see that Trebbiano Toscano is on the 8th place right now. It used to be the most planted white variety in Italy in the past, but you can see now that Glera and Pinot Grigio has taken the first spots there on the list. So it's the same variety as Ugni Blanche in France, used for Armagnac and Cognac. And it's also it was also used to make the crossing for the PV variety Vidal, used for ice wine in many places. It's a high yielding variety, high acidity, very neutral. So many different styles of wines are made with Trebbiano Toscano, from still wines to sparkling to liqueur, and even sweet wines. Great versatility. But it has this bad reputation because it was planted in so many places and not taken care of carefully. It's also very often when you read text, you see that many claim that Trebbiano Toscano was part of the original recipe for Chianti, the Ricasoli recipe. It seems like this isn't correct, that it was only Malvasia, and Trebbiano Toscano was added later to add volume and acidity to Chianti. But until 2005, it was allowed in Chianti Classico. It's still then it was banned from the recipe. It's still allowed in Chianti. You're still allowed in Chianti to add 10% of Trebbiano Toscano. Not very common, but at least it's allowed. So when in 2005, Trebbiano Toscano wasn't allowed anymore in the Chianti Classico, the vineyards were still there, so no one really knew what to do with all of the grapes that they had. So to kind of help the producers with this surplus, the big ones in Tuscany, we have Rufino, Antinori, Ricasoli, and some others. They created a wine called Gallestro that I think you have heard of. It was a very simple, easygoing commercial wine made in large quantities with a little bit of Chardonnay. But slowly the plantings of Trebbiano were taken away, and red varieties were planted instead, where you used to have Trebbiano. So today in Tuscany, it's only 5% of the production, with only 3,000 hectares in Tuscany. But there are producers that believe in Trebbiano and the future for this underdog, I would call it. I'm from the suburb in Stockholm, so I do have a weak spot for underdogs. And we have three of them with us today. So just a short presentation of the three wineries. We're going to go back here. So we have Stefano Capurso from Dievole. Thanks for being with us. Can you say something a little bit about Dievole and yourself?
Good afternoon or good morning, everyone. Thank you for having us here. Dievole, I'll try to summarize in a few words what Dievole is all about, because actually Dievole dates back many centuries. We have memories and documents proving that Dievole was already existing in 1090, so a few centuries ago. Dievole as a very interesting recent story, because until 2012 was in the belongings of the Schwemm family, a Swiss family that used to run the company for more than 20 years. And then for some family reasons in 2012 they decided to get rid of the property and to go back in their country, which is Switzerland. And we took over the winery, which was a winery pretty much focused on international varieties rather than Sangiovese. So at that time, the most famous wines of the company were wines based on Merlot and Cabernet, or blends or whatsoever. Since we had to rethink the project, we decided since the beginning to go back to the origins and focus only on local grapes. Of course, Sangiovese first, and some side grapes such as Colorino and Canaiolo. But since the beginning, we thought that we had to give a chance to the only white grapes belonging to our origins, which is Trebbiano. Today, Dievole is a medium-sized winery with 150 hectares of vineyards. Out of these, 100 is Chianti Classico, actually. But what is making Dievole more interesting so far is the fact that, first of all, we decided since the beginning to turn our viticulture in organic, thinking organic not as a marketing tool, but as like the only way to feature wines representing the terroir they are coming from. And so it was quite a long process, not only converting the existing vineyards, but also replanting some other vineyards.
Yeah, and we're going to go back to that. And Dievole you also have a estate in Montalcino and in Bolgheri.
Yes. Yeah.
And you're in the southern part of Chianti Classico, and in one of the 11 ugas or villages.
Yeah, in Vagliali, which is difficult to pronounce.
Yeah, we need some wine to be able to pronounce that, actually, Vagliali.
So it's a good exercise for the one that wants to learn Italian. And Vagliali is part of the Castelnuovo Berardenga commune, which is one of the largest communes in Tuscany, by the way. And it's interesting because Castelnuovo, the commune has a shape of a butterfly. So you have a western wing, which is Vagliali, and an eastern wing, which is Castelnuovo. And the decision why we decided to have an Uga Vagliali was because the two wings are really, really different in terms of terroir, and the wines you get from the two wings are really different in style. So Vagliali has his own specific style that we can talk about eventually later.
Yeah, we have to do another talk about Vagliali in the future. So we're going to thank you, Stefano, and Sofia Rune, that is from Terreno in Greve, and Montefioralle, so two other villages in Chianti Classico. And Sofia is a fellow Swede. And Sofia, your family came to Greve and to Terreno in 1988, but you took over some 10 years ago. Can you tell us a little bit about Terreno and what you changed since you came and took over?
Yes, thank you, Åsa, and thank you everyone for having me. So the estate name is Terreno, and like Åsa said, where the main estate is in Greve in Chianti, but I also have vineyards in Montefioralle. And I arrived at Terreno 15 years ago, but took over about 10 years ago, the winemaking and the running of the estate. And for me, it's always been very important to bring Terreno to a place where we run everything from our own land, so to say. It's been important for me to convert to organic, obviously, but also to make the whole estate sustainable. So today we are with water and heating and, of course, wine and olive oil and vegetables and all that. But it's been an amazing challenge to do this. And also with electricity. Regarding the wines, we have 20 hectares. With 15 of them being in Greve and 5 in Montefioralle. And this allows me to play around with 3 different soils and 3 different altitudes, and also expositions, which is a great thing when you make Sangiovese, but also very interesting when you start valuing the Trebbiano as well.
Thank you very much. So I'm not sure if is Maddalena and Matteo with us now?
Yes.
Oh, hello, there
Yes,
you are.
good evening.
Yes.
Yeah,
Good
I'm
morning,
here.
hello, or good evening. So Maddalena and Matteo, you started your production in 2016 in San Casciano at Cigliano di Sopra. And we can see that you're still very young, but you were only 21 and 22 at the time.
Yes.
So an important choice of life, so young. So can you tell us a little bit about your philosophy and your story?
So Maddalena and I, at first, hello everyone, and thank you for having us. And so we met at university in 2014 or 15. And Cigliano di Sopra is Maddalena's family property since the early 20th century. And until 2016, there were 3 hectares of vineyards, and the production was made and sold as bulk wine. While studying for an exam in 2016, we decided to start practicing some winemaking and to produce to make the first fermentation of 1,000 bottles that were our first vintage, 2016. And since that moment, we planted some new hectares, all surrounding the property. Now we have 8 hectares of vineyards, mainly planted with Sangiovese and with some Trebbiano and Canaiolo. And our philosophy is to make wines without anything else than grapes. So the idea is to focus on the terroir using techniques in set of enological products and trying to do our best.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you for being with us today. We know that you have been out in the fields today harvesting. So can you show your hands? Let's check if you're telling the truth.
Now are clean.
Yeah.
But you can see our outfit.
Are quite dirty. Yeah.
Perfect.
It's raining, so this is a hard harvest this year, but it's raining a lot. So it's hard to find good windows to go inside the fields and pick the grapes up.
Yeah, we heard. Fingers crossed, fingers crossed. So Stefano, I'm going to come back to you because you invested a lot in replantings with Trebbiano Toscano since the change of ownership, and everyone was quite surprised. So you're a believer, and can you tell us what was the strategy at the time? And can you tell us a little bit about the material and how you thought when you planted the new Trebbianos?
Actually, as I said, in the very beginning, we decided to get rid of most of the international grapes already planted. So the first step was trying to understand what the property was all about, and also talking with the people born in this place with the genius loci, so the knowledge on what was going on over here. We understood that in the past, before the Schwen period, Trebbiano and Malvasia were grown in the estate, and the previous property were aging these white grapes in white wines in order to make wines long-lasting wines. So we were lucky enough to find 4 hectares already planted
with old material, with Trebbiano.
Yes, exactly. In the lower part of the estate, keep in mind that the estate is benefiting of 2 main kind of soils. So you have Formazione Montemorello, which is basically a kind of soil very rich in calcareous components. Which is predominant in the estate, and then you have a lot of clay schists all over in the estate. So you have a lot of crossing of different kind of soils. And what is interesting is that in the very bottom part on the west bank of the Arbia River, we are at 100 meters above the sea level. We have a kind of plain, very rich in both of the kind of soils, but it is alluvional, so very deep, very drained, with some spot with clays. And we thought that would have been the right place to plant Trebbiano, starting from some research made by Professor Bandinelli that selected some clones that we replanted there. And it was a big challenge since the beginning because we planted 10 hectares. So it's
big risk.
Yeah.
So, and what kind of rootstock did you use? What were you looking for?
Actually, our experience, because we turned everything in organic, was trying to use as much as possible very vigorous kind of rootstocks, because for two reasons. First of all, because the lack of water. And looking also at the global warming and the lack of water we are having in the last 20 years, we thought that would have been the right way to go. And second, because as I said, we have deep soils with a lot of minerals. So using this kind of rootstocks, we would have had much more minerality
in the wines. And what kind of pruning system did you choose and why?
It's Guyot.
It's Guyot. And why that?
Well, it's we believe it's less producing and give us the chance to have a better maturation, not only on Trebbiano, but also and especially on Sangiovese. So what we found in the estate was mostly Cordone Speronato, Gordon Spoon, which was made first because most of the harvest was made by machine at that time, so it was easier probably for them, I guess. But we turned everything Guyot.
Okay.
It took a while, but the results are coming. I mean, and again, we planted these 10 hectares. And having also 4 hectares with an average age of 16, 17 years at that time.
Oh, that's great. We're going to come back to the winemaking also and talk about the winemaking that is also particular for what you do, well, all of the 3 wineries.
Yeah.
But Sofia, can you tell us about you? Because your vineyard with Trebbiano is in Montefiorale on high altitude. So can you tell us how it started and what is the biggest challenge for you with Trebbiano Toscano?
So the vineyard in Montefiorale was something that I added in 2015 to have another soil, but above all another elevation for the Sangiovese. It was mainly for the Sangiovese. The goal was the Sangiovese, but as we know in Chianti Classico, there's always a little bit of Trebbiano everywhere. And I think when we started, the first time we started to do the Trebbiano by itself was in 2016, but we dabbled with a very small amount to see if it was something interesting. And since then, we've been experimenting to also start to value the Trebbiano by itself, the more traditional.
And what's the soil type? You said it was different, but
the soil type up in Montefiorale is Pietraforte. So it's a calcareous, stony soil. Up on the ridge, we have the highest vineyard in Montefiorale, so it's at 510 meters.
And how old are the vines?
The Trebbiano vines are 42 years old. So I have no idea what kind of clones there are or anything like that. But they're very highly productive. And I would say that our biggest challenge with the vineyard in Montefiorale is that we want the Trebbiano to reach the perfect maturation, of course, for what we want to do, but there are always a lot of thieves up there. So we've actually had a lot of our Trebbiano been stolen just before harvest in the middle.
But by animals or human animals?
I think it's two-legged animals, unfortunately. But now we've come to terms with that since a few years, and now we have a more stable production since we started investing more in heavy gates. But we had a few bumpy years there in the beginning.
Oh, so you came to the field and everything was gone?
Everything.
Okay, well, that's interesting. I'm glad you have the locked it in now, because it's a very nice wine you're making. We're going to come back to that again. And Maddalena and Matteo, did you, when you came in 2016, did you already have a vineyard with Trebbiano Toscano, or did you plant it?
So yes, we had vineyards in the old vineyards of Chianti Classico, planted in the 70s and the early 80s. There were some vines of Trebbiano.
Oh, so mixed like a field blend together with Sangiovese.
Exactly, it was a field blend. So the first two vintage, actually, 2019 and 20, were like hunting for the white vine inside the Sangiovese vineyards. And I remember in your first visit, Åsa, in Cigliano, we had the Ciglianello, the white, that was the first Trebbiano 2019.
I remember. I was very impressed. I was very impressed already then.
Then those were the first experiments of white vinification, and that was, we thought, was really interesting for the analytic parameters and for the taste of the Trebbiano, that is truly a modern variety, because it tends to not have too much alcohol and keeps the acidity really well. So it's a wine that, if well made, and it's not easy, but can be very good. So we start grafting a small piece of a Sangiovese vineyard where there were some Merlot rows, like 3 or 4 Merlot rows planted in the late 90s. That was common, especially for producing the bulk wine. Merlot was used to give more color and structure to the wine. So we started regrafting, and now we have around 2,000 vines of Trebbiano.
Oh, that's interesting. So I'm going to stay with you and start to talk with you about the winemaking, because you tried out different styles, right? From I tried the first vintage in 2019, and if I'm not incorrect, you used oak at the time, didn't you? Yeah. So what has been the challenge when it comes to winemaking with Trebbiano, and what was your first idea, and what did you change over time?
So when we talk about wine, the thing I think it's more interesting is that you have one try for year, no? When you want to experiment something, especially if you have a very small amount of grapes, you have to decide the way and say, okay, this year we try it this way. And so the first year we tried the old way to steam and leave the fermentation starts, then put the free-run juice fermenting in barrel. Then we moved to a short maceration.
And what weren't you happy with that oak fermentation in oak?
The result was quite good, but was missing some texture. And also because we weren't removing some grapes immediately after the flowering. Because I think another really important, since Trebbiano is a very
high yielding,
yes, we have to keep it a little calm, removing some bunches. So now we leave 1 bunches per shoot immediately after flowering, and in this way you already have some more texture, mid-palate.
More concentration. Okay. And what did you?
Too much alcohol.
Sorry.
Without having alcohol increasing too much.
And what do you do now? So you went from the fermentation in oak, and then what happened?
Then we experimented for 2 years, 2022 and 23, a small carbonic fermentation. So 5 days of whole bunches and then press and fermenting in demijohn and some barrels. And this year, we harvested Trebbiano later last week, and we did the direct press and barrel fermenting.
Ah,
But with
okay.
very low yields vines.
So we changed again our mind.
Yes, for
Okay.
from 2,000 vines, we made 5 barrels of Trebbiano.
Okay, we look forward to try it. We look forward to try it.
But I think the last one would be the best because we are trying a lot of way to make Trebbiano, and now maybe direct press will be the best.
Okay, then we will have a new tech sheet. This is actually, I have to say this is a picture and information that I borrowed from Wine Anorak, so it's correct to say that. I think Jamie visited you lately.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
now we have a new label, actually a little bit better than this one. It was still an experiment, and
Okay.
also we removed the Malvasia.
Okay.
The years.
Okay, that's good to know. So we look forward to see that in the future. It's a work in progress, always at Cigliano di Sopra.
Yeah, always.
And Sofia, how did you start to work with Trebbiano, and where are you now when it comes to winemaking?
When it comes to winemaking, the first times we did much as the previous speaker, that we put them on wood as well, small barrique, for the fermentation, which was not something that I think that it lacked texture, and it wasn't as interesting as I wanted it to be. It was something else. And then we did 1 year on stainless steel, but I saw that the problem with reduction was quite heavy with the Trebbiano, and I think that the wine got too tight also in stainless steel, and so we tried in Cliver. So our Trebbiano is made with no stems, but 8 days of maceration, and then the fermentation and the aging is on Cliver. And the great thing with that is that the Cliver, the shape of the Cliver allows for a natural batonnage all the time. It keeps on moving, so you don't get those heavy notes of reduction. This is a macerated wine, but it's not too much oxygen coming in because the Cliver doesn't allow too much oxygen.
So how is it in color? How does the color become? Would you call it an orange wine?
Well, it becomes much more rich in color, of course, and the texture becomes much more interesting, I would say. It's still not an orange wine, some of those that you can taste that are very, very heavy. But it brings out much more of the interesting parts of the Trebbiano, in my opinion. And it's now a beautiful wine with beautiful minerality and texture.
Thank you. And we see the label here in the tech sheet, and then we're gonna. So Stefano, you like to make your life difficult, so you use different. You use many different types of oak, right? So tell us a little bit about how you arrived to this type of winemaking. Tell us what it is and how you arrived to this solution.
Actually, in order to make our life even more difficult, we decided to start with a 17 vintage, which
so
was
very warm, very hot.
Not the best vintage to start with a white wine. But it was a good experiment because since the beginning, I mean, first of all, we started trying to limit the maceration with the skins, because Trebbiano has the tendency to release a certain kind of bitterness. So it was just a simple fermentation. We just use cement for the fermentation, which is nothing new in Toscana, because if you go back to the 70s and also the 80s, the fermentation in Toscana was all about cement, maybe coated, vitrified, non-natural cement as we are using so far, but was cement. So a fermentation that then ended up in big cask, 50 hectoliters of untoasted French oak. And that was the first experiment, which was quite nice. because we were able not only to show the minerality, which is one of the characteristics of Trebbiano, but also a certain kind of freshness that in such a vintage was not easy at all. What we were missing was at the nose. We found that the nose was quite flat, which is typical of Trebbiano. Trebbiano is quite neutral. So in the second vintage, which was 18, right the opposite of the 17, so very wet, we introduced also acacia in order to try to give the wine a more flowery nose and bouquet. But it was, let me say, sort of artificial. So we found that the flavors and the nose that we got was not belonging to Trebbiano. So we went back to our decisions. And finally, with the 2019 vintage, we reached the final formula.
Are you sure?
Which was introducing barrels made in Toscana out of Toscan oak and chestnut.
So no more acacia, just chestnut.
No more acacia. We got rid of the acacia. We believe is adding too much to the wine.
And instead, what does the chestnut add?
The chestnut it can be a little bit tricky because chestnut gives a sort of very end bitterness to the wine, so it has to be blended in small percentages. I would say this is not I mean a recipe, but no more than 10-15% of the total batch you are aging.
Okay.
In addition to that, also nowadays we are releasing today the 21 vintage. We make a very quick maceration in the press, 4 or 5 hours, in order to enrich the wine. Not too much, because as we said, the skins are giving too much bitterness, which is probably the characteristic that gave the Trebbiano some of the reputation we are bringing from the past.
Yeah, very phenolic, yes.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's great. Some interesting work you have made there. So we're gonna round up, but I wanted when you take a look at your wines, all three of you, they have very low alcohol. So as Matteo said, they're modern wines in a way, if you look at the trends right now. So high acidity, low alcohol, it's made with an indigenous variety and so on, but still this old bad reputation. So what do you think about the future? What type of, where can it find its place in the markets? What kind of future do you see? Possibilities and challenges. Maddalena and Matteo, what do you think? Someone of you has to answer. I'm sorry.
I think it can be like a ligoté in Burgundy, more or less. The idea is the same. It can be the same.
So you think for a niched public that is really interesting in something different?
I think that it's important to give an identity to Trebbiano because it's a very versatile variety. So you can go from maceration to very classic white wine style, so barrel fermentation and aging on the lees. But if we talk about Toscana, I think more than Vermentino, Trebbiano is the white from Toscana.
Yeah. So, and what price point does your wine enter the market with?
The Eureka
on
price.
the shelf. No, on the shelf price in Italy.
25, 30.
30, yeah.
Okay. And what about you, Sofia? What do you think about Trebbiano and your Otto Silano?
I think that there is a big potential in the market. I think that people are very, very curious at the moment to taste indigenous grapes, and I think that the quality of the Trebbiano wines coming out is amazing. If you compare it to what it was just 10 years ago. So I think that the knowledge of Trebbiano will keep on rising. And every time I bring or Otto Silano around, people really enjoy it and appreciate also the technique of winemaking and the style of wine. So I think it has a bright future. It's going to take a few years to bring it back into the spotlight, but I think it has great potential.
And what price point are your Trebbiano?
I'm the same, between 25 and 30 as well.
Mm-hmm. And Stefano, last but not least, what do you think?
Well, listen, of course, for us, it's a challenge, but also we see a bright future for this wine because we planted 10 hectares, so it shouldn't be anything different to that. I think the only problem we are having so far is trying to convince our clients, restaurants, or whatsoever, to talk about Trebbiano, to talk about the new wave of Trebbiano, because people have still in mind the Trebbiano of the past, the Galestro. I mean, I'm not blaming the producers of Galestro. They did what the market was requiring at that time. But I think also we need among the producers, no matter if we are big, small, or medium-sized, to create a sort of movement and start promoting Trebbiano as the new Trebbianos that we are making in Toscana all together.
Yeah, because because like Maddalena said with Aligoté, we have the organization in Burgundy, right? The Alligators.
Exactly.
So maybe some kind of
the Trebbiano Toscano, which is promoting this grape, which is fantastic. I mean, it's so interesting. And I saw. I mean, I was listening the initial talks, and you were talking about Etna. Etna started as a movement because nobody knew Etna until 20 years ago. And now it's a big thing, although in very small size of the appellation. But we need to work all together in order to promote the grape.
That's I believe that too. Collaboration is always one of the main keys to success. So thank you all very much. We're 18:45, so Swedish more or less time schedule. So we're gonna open up for questions. So I'm gonna stop sharing my screen here. Here we are. So if you have a question, you just open your microphone, I suppose, and ask the question.
Well, I've had a quick look, and Michelle has a couple of questions. I think one or two Stefano has already answered to Michelle Padberg regarding clones, but there's a couple there from Michelle. So do you want to go ahead, Michelle?
Yes, thanks, Andrea. Well, one of my questions was about the older vines of Trebbiano, and you know, whether because of the lower probably yield from older vines, do these produce a kind of like a good balance in terms of volume and quality as opposed to the younger vines, or do you see no difference?
It's for me, Michelle.
Well, I think it was Matteo and Maddalena who were maybe talking about their older vines, but whoever has older vines, I would really like to know, maybe a couple of you or all three of you.
I can start answering, and yes, the old vines is like a person in its maturity, so they are more balanced, and the roots are deeper, so it's more connected to the soil and express better the terroir. In the young vineyards, you feel more the variety, I think, in the old vineyards, you feel more the terroir, and the variety it's like a secondary. And then yes, also the yields of the old vines are lower, probably because there were no clonal selection. And when the clones were made, basically what people were looking for was the production that needed to be good to create a clone.
So obviously before they were looking to produce much more volume than with Trebbiano, but yeah, I think you can get really good, very structured wines from Trebbiano, and I'd be very interested to taste some of the old wines. So come and visit sometime. Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you have another question there, Michelle, as well?
Yeah. I just have you, as Tuscan producers, were you influenced by the reputation of Abruzzo's Trebbiano? Because Abruzzo always had a very good reputation, had fantastic producers like Valentini and Marina, I can't remember, Civetic, and many others. So I was just wondering if that maybe was a sort of gave you a push, incentive to dig deeper into the Trebbiano variety.
For sure. I mean, I think their experience was a little bit convincing and inspiring us. Although I must say that since the beginning we are tasting our wines blind beside the big ones from Abruzzo that you mentioned before, and I would say that the style is more different. I mean, I find the Trebbiano Toscano much cleaner, with all the respect, I mean, of the Abruzzo producers. I mean, it's a different style. I mean, I think nowadays, as Matteo was underlining before, we are able to feature wines that have in the minerality and the freshness the main characteristic. If you see, we have acidities of 6 grams per liter. I mean, which is unbelievable. This is allowing the wines to last over the years, and that's the characteristic that it's really highlighting our Trebbianos, I think. I mean, I don't know if they agree with me, but we are discovering from vintage to vintage these wines. And what is making the wines unique is the fact that they really, really reflect the vintage they are coming from. So you can tell the vintage. That's very important.
Think you very much, both of you. Thank you.
Sophia, do you have anything to add to that, or?
I think that the most important part with the Trebbiano is to, like we've said, is to value it as well for the components that it has, and my inspiration for making Trebbiano was always the challenge also to be able to do a little bit of revolution with Trebbiano, I have to say, in Chianti Classico, and I have in my vineyards as well Trebbiano all over the place, but also vineyards specifically for Trebbiano. But it's also and so the challenge was to revalue that, where it comes from as well. You're supposed to be able to really taste that it's a Trebbiano from Chianti Classico area and from that soil.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much.
I suppose with a number of educators here, is there any of you that use Trebbiano in tastings and find how it's the reactions that you get from the tasters? Is there any there that you can remember or not? No, maybe something to look ahead with.
Yes, I used in some Ugni Blanc, not Trebbiano, but let me say generally considered Trebbiano. This evening I had the opportunity to know a bit more about the unrelated Trebbianos. However, generally Ugni Blanc is considered quite neutral, not and it's difficult to have a marker to differentiate this grape from the other ones. And I think one problem of Trebbiano is if you don't have any marker, how can you stand up? And I think there is a lot of work to do in terms of the definition of the markers of Trebbiano Toscano and Trebbiano generally. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Does anybody else have any other questions?
Could I ask about the number of producers working on Trebbiano Toscano? Are you a very, very small number among the Chianti Classico producers, or are more and more people joining you? And will this mean that the wines will be more readily available on the market? Because I think some of the problem, as you've already said, is promoting them and the wines being in front of people so that they can try them and appreciate them.
If I can answer.
Yes, go ahead, Stefano.
For sure is, I would say in the last 5-6 years, there is a movement in Chianti Classico. More and more producers are starting with small productions. I mean, Dievole and Terreno and Cigliano are three of the producers, but then you have Ricasoli that started producing. I know that also Giovanni Manetti is doing something. So there is for sure a movement, because we need to promote our appellation not only for the fantastic Chianti Classico, but also for some white wines representing not only our heritage, but what we are doing so far. Outside Chianti Classico, there are some producers in Carmignano or in Valdarno, famous ones. I think it will be growing. Of course, the volumes are very small, so the presence on the main market is not existing yet, but the interest is very high. I see more and more young sommeliers that when you talk about Trebbiano, they want to know more. You sit down and maybe you taste verticals and they are full of questions. And when there are a lot of questions, means the interest is there. So I'm very positive about that.
Great, thank you very much.
Madeleine.
Shared by the other participants.
Yes. Maddalena, Matteo, anything to say with the number of producers of Trebbiano or that you know?
They are increasing a lot. And also the white trend is increasing. So people like to drink white. So it's something that is growing up.
Yes, until 10-15 years ago, the white in Toscana, especially Trebbiano and Malvasia, were going into the reds. Now, since some wineries has a very good heritage of all the Trebbiano vines, and I see more and more people starting experimenting with Trebbiano, and this is something that cannot be immediate, because there is not a very old tradition of white wine making with Trebbiano in Toscana. So it's something that needs to be studied, and there is not only one option. We have 3 wines. Today we are talking about 3 wines they made in 3 different ways. If we talk about Burgundy, for example, is a region that has a very long history for white wine making. Everyone basically works the same way. They press the grapes and put them in barrels or cement before aging in barrels. So I think there is it's wine. You need 1 year to try one thing, then the year after you can try another thing. So it will take quite a long time, but the interest is here, and many wineries are starting working with Trebbiano. And if a lot of people are starting, to me means that there is potential, and we can see that there is potential. Then wine needs time, and maybe vintage 2024 will be ready to drink in 2028, and So it's already
And-
4 years, yeah.
And then Trebbiano is like a neutral variety, so it's not so aromatic at the beginning, so it's hard to manage in the cellar. So we are still studying how to manage it.
Åsa, is there anything else you wish to add?
No, I don't think so. I think we covered a lot. So thank you to the producers for sharing so much. Thank you, Stefano and Sofia and Maddalena and Matteo.
Thank you.
Very generous of you with your time and your knowledge. So thank you very much.
And whenever you want to stop by, you are very welcome, of course.
Thank you so
I
much.
will.
Fammi sapere,
I'm in
let me know.
Tuscany. No, so I also want to thank the producers and thank Åsa very much for this interesting talk on Trebbiano. And I hope that in the next Chianti Classico collection, they'll also have a lineup of Trebbiano wines, so we can also have something a bit more refreshing after going through all of those bottles of Chianti Classico.